I'm joined now by California Attorney General Rob Bonta. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. So, a major story right now that's been sweeping across the country is the fact that the DOJ, Donald Trump's Department of Justice, has announced that they're sending poll monitors, poll watchers into California and New Jersey. And obviously, there is a ton of room for them to be able to abuse the system by using, folks from the federal government who are loyal to Donald Trump and his agenda. But there is a response being put forward by you and the folks here in California. Can you explain what that is?
Absolutely. We got notice last week that the US DOJ was sending poll monitors to five different counties in California: LA and Orange, Riverside, Kern, Fresno. And in normal times, this is something that the US DOJ does do when there's a history of violations and a sincere and good faith effort and desire to protect the rights of voters. But these are not normal times. And this has been a historic presidency, historically unlawful, historically unconstitutional, historically undemocratic, and historically un-American. And so trust is earned. It's not just given. And what they have done when it comes to voting rights in the last 10 months is attack them and with an executive order that tries to undermine the right to vote when it comes to vote by mail, or trying to attack vote by mail generally. That's something that Trump has said. He posted, 2 days ago that we need to watch the outcome of this election on Prop 50 in California, and he continues to maintain that he won the 2020 election, which obviously he did not, and there's no data or evidence to show it. So what we're doing is we're going to make sure that there are eyeballs in the room, that there are observers observing the monitors, to make sure that they do what they are lawfully allowed to do and nothing more, and that they don't violate the rules that govern them, the law, that they don't interfere with the election process. They may observe, as may others. And just to level set, there are many people who observe. There are members of the Republican Party, members of the Democratic Party. There are members of the Secretary of State's office, my office, the Registrar of Voters office, members of the public, nonprofits, like good government groups like League of Women Voters. Transparency is good. And we have nothing to hide. We are transparent, and when anyone looks at our elections process, they'll see that our elections are safe, secure, accurate, reliable. So normally, this type of action is not particularly noteworthy, but it is when it's a state election only. One thing on the ballot, it seems to be targeting of California once again. And I don't believe, unfortunately, that there's a sincere effort to protect the rights of voters. It seems like a precursor of more to come, including next year when the very important midterms are on the ballot.
And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But I want to ask, who specifically are the California-based poll monitors that are being sent in, and will they have the same access as the DOJ officials will?
Yes, there's a general set of observer rights that apply to anyone, members of the public, members of the US DOJ, members of California DOJ, Secretary of State, Registrar of Voters. So the state-based ones, the non-US DOJ observers, will be from my office, from the Secretary of State's office, also potentially from the Registrar of Voters in each county.
Okay. Now, in terms of the White House's justification for doing this, what are we looking at here? Do you think that there is a clear reason that they're sending these folks in to states that have blue governors, for example? I mean, they're not sending any poll monitors into Virginia. And so do you think that the only reason that they're choosing New Jersey and California is because there are enough Democratic officials in place that they can then use that as a pretext to be able to say, look, the Democrats are in control here. There was a rigged election. We've got folks who are monitoring this. They found all these discrepancies, all this nefarious behavior, and it's Democrats from top to bottom.
The facts don't lie on this, and I wish the answer were different, but the Trump administration has been targeting blue states because they're blue cities because they're blue, deploying National Guard to blue cities and blue cities only in the biggest blue states. And that's by design. And he's clear about it. He's going after radical leftists and the Democrats. And so it is definitely a targeting of Democrats. And it's unfortunate that they're doing that, but that's clearly what their MO has been. And I do fear that there will be some invented or manufactured crisis that they create, something they say they observe that's problematic, which they try to rely on later next year, where they say requires more poll watchers at the polling stations, maybe even National Guard or others. So I don't put it past this administration, unfortunately, based on their past conduct.
And that's exactly what I wanted to get into. Let's say, for example, that they send poll monitors in now, and those poll monitors, who of course are going to be answerable to Trump, and I can only imagine the type of people that Trump is going to be willing to deploy. And let's say that those people are going to validate Trump's most egregious lies as it relates to any inevitable whining about non-existent election fraud or election rigging. How could that manifest itself in 2026? If he's given himself some thin pretext, some thin justification to think that it's okay to take extraordinary measures because he's told himself that there's some fraudulent activity going on, what could that look like? What's the worst case scenario in terms of how he could use that as a basis to do whatever he wants in an unhinged manner in 2026 or 2028?
Yeah, and I just want to be clear here that there's no evidence at all in California that there's any widespread voter fraud or
Right.
anything problematic. So the idea of the USDOJ monitors coming in seems pretextual, and they were requested to come in at the request of the Republican Party. So the Republican Party sent a letter to USDOJ, and USDOJ jumped at the opportunity to respond to the Republican Party and come into the biggest blue state in the nation. But what we could see down the road is an escalation. This is a down payment, a precursor of more to come, potentially, hopefully not. But we can't be naive. We got to be clear-eyed and sober about what this president has done. For example, he's deployed National Guard in LA, Oregon, Chicago, and DC in the first 9 months in office,
Right.
relying on 10 USC 12406, which has only been relied once before in the history of the United States. He's relied on it 3 times already. So he does unprecedented things. He escalates quickly. He justifies it in his own mind with figments of his imagination. He thinks he won the 2020 election. He thinks there's widespread voter fraud, or at least he says there is, in order to promote the lie. And he continues to promote that very dangerous lie. And I think he will, as he does with the National Guard, he lies about the facts in order to justify the action. So I think he'll lie about the facts here again, lie that there is some sort of voter fraud and that he needs to, bring in forces or people or resources into California to ensure that there is integrity in the voting process and that the elections are accurate and reliable. So, having seen him operate before, I don't wish this to happen. I hope it doesn't. But we have to be clear-eyed and sober about how this man thinks and how he acts, the big lies that he promotes when he promotes them. He's doing it to justify action. And so we have to be very wary about what that action might be in the future. And it could be a mass escalation of deployment of federal personnel into California. And of course, that would suppress the vote. That would intimidate. It would chill. It would prevent people from participating. And what he might do on vote by mail is also of concern. He has criticized it and said it should end based on the strong recommendation of that champion of democracy, Vladimir Putin, who told him that we should get rid of vote by mail.
Knowing how he operates and knowing that he's going to look for the thinnest pretext of all, baseless pretext even, to perpetuate whatever lies that he decides he wants to tell, and that he does it quickly, are you prepared to be able to fight back in the event that he decides to glom on to something on November 4th and say, look, we saw a million instances of this, votes in suitcases, whatever he lands on, whatever crazy excuse he lands on that night. Do you have the resources in place? Do you have a plan in place to be able to immediately push back on whatever lies he's going to push forward, knowing that those lies are eventually going to serve as some basis for him to do the escalation that we all know he wants to do?
We're ready. We've always been ready. We've seen all of the different potential plays in the playbook. We've added to it as he's channeled and projected other actions he might take. We read Project 2025. We listened to everything he says, and we assume he's going to do it. So we're ready to move quickly. We have a rapid response team ready to move quickly if we need to go to court. Courts are still places where the facts matter, where you need to have the facts. You can't just make wild, reckless, irresponsible, untruthful statements like, unfortunately, this president does regularly. And courts are places where a judge will look at the actual facts and the claims of the president and conclude that the president's version of the facts is untethered from the actual facts, which is what Judge Immergut in the District of Oregon said about Oregon's state of affairs on the ground when the president was saying it's war ravaged and war torn. She said that that was untethered from the facts. So we have a plan. We're prepared to go in to block any attempts by the president or his administration to interfere with the reliable, safe, and secure elections here in the state of California.
And finally, I want to switch gears to a different topic entirely. You and a number of other attorneys general across the country have waged a new lawsuit against this Trump administration. Can you explain what that lawsuit is?
Absolutely. We brought our 45th lawsuit in 40 weeks. Today, the state of California did proudly, along with 25 other states, 23 all 23 Democratic Attorney General states, as well as 3 other states where there's a Republican AG, but a Democratic governor who wanted to protect their people and make sure that they got SNAP benefits, food assistance from the government. And we argued that the federal administration is unlawfully withholding billions of dollars in funding for the SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, food stamps. There's a law, the SNAP Act, which says that funding, including funding in a contingency fund, which the government has, shall be spent. It's a shall to support SNAP benefits when there is funding in that pot. And as recently as 2019, the last government shutdown, that's exactly what that funding was used for. The contingency fund was used to fund SNAP. So there's 41 million people that are going to be hurt across the nation in both blue states and red states. It's 5.5 million in California. We're going to lose $1.1 million in 1 month. This is $8 billion a month in terms of the burn rate that's expended on SNAP. So, and these are children who won't have enough to eat. These are seniors. These are the disabled. These are our most vulnerable. And when it comes to our most vulnerable, I believe our society should be treated on how, or judged on how we treat our most vulnerable. And in that regard, Trump gets an F because they do have the money, they can spend it, they are deliberately deciding not to. So that they can blame the Democrats. They're trying to use it as a cudgel and a bludgeon in the negotiations over the government shutdown. The funding's there, they can spend it, but they're not spending it on purpose, hurting people deliberately. Cruelty is the policy, cruelty is the outcome, cruelty is the desire, so then they can then try to blame it on the Democrats. And they already have on their SNAP website a statement that says, the well is dry, blame the Senate Democrats, essentially.
Right. I think you're exactly right in the sense that this is their governing philosophy. Their governing philosophy is just to help the folks who already have more than they could ever ask for, and just help them consolidate more wealth, more power for themselves. And meanwhile, I think the philosophy that you have on the left is that the government should be there to assist the most vulnerable. And so you just have as clear a distinction as you could possibly have. And it does not help that the White House right now, as they're continuing to cut these SNAP benefits for 42 million Americans, as they're continuing to cut Medicaid from 17 million Americans, as they're looking to increase ACA subsidies for 24 million Americans, that what they are focused on, what is getting done, is a $350 million ballroom that Donald Trump is going to be able to enjoy with his pals and heads of state, giving Gulfstream jets to Kristi Noem, retrofitting a $400 million Qatari jet to the tune of $1 billion paid for by American taxpayers, hosting crypto dinners so that he can double his net worth, and of course adorning the Oval Office in gold leafing. So he is putting on full display what his priorities are, and meanwhile you can see who's kind of getting left behind as the result of that. With that said, Attorney General Rob Bonta, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. Great to see you. Thanks for having me.